But he would say, I believe in global warming, but for some reason, it's been hijacked with this emissions trading. Everyone's got pushing this emissions trading. No, I believe we've got to do something about it. I don't believe we need to do something about it, but he does. And he's a clever guy. I respect his viewpoint. At least he's saying, it doesn't add up. Emissions trading, cap and trade, does not add up. It will cripple the world's economy. Meanwhile, Africans are dying, starving. We could be spending the money helping these people, or improving the trade, make it a bit more fair. There's many, many ways we can improve the world law. And we're going to throw all this money into this huge bureaucracy and control system. What we should be doing is maybe putting on a blanket GDP tax and of, let's say, I think he suggested 0.5%, which is actually quite a lot, but would generate still quite a lot of money, and that should be just attributed to new technologies, to new tech, clean tech as they call it. So that's the other way of perhaps approaching the problem, but there is no problem.
Let's get back to there is no problem. Let's get back to CO2, the chief culprit in the whole equation. From your own research, what is your view of the function of CO2 in this entire equation and what they are saying about it, the global warming alarmists?
Okay, now the science of CO2, of course, is complex, and that's one of the beauties of blaming it on CO2. The science of CO2, there's two aspects of what CO2 can be doing. One is totally agree with everybody, and one is extremely controversial. CO2, like every other greenhouse gas in our atmosphere, can absorb energy and then re-emit it at a different wavelength. Now the thing is, the CO2 is essentially saturated within its absorption spectrum. However, if you add more CO2, there will be an effect, but it's a non-linear effect. So essentially, we are at the top of the curve. The curve goes up and we're at the top of the curve. So if you add more and more CO2, it makes very little difference, to the extent that if you assumed all of the CO2 on the planet was man-made, which it's not, at most you can say it's a quarter. I mean, most counts would agree maybe a quarter. But let's say we assume all of the CO2 on the planet is man-made, anthropogenic as they call it, and you doubled it again, which would take another 100-200 years, depending how our world and industrial growth goes. So let's say for another 100 years, and we double the total, we'll go for 1 degree Celsius. In fact, prove it. You can do it in the lab. You can just show it in the lab. It's an observable phenomenon. By the way, warming is good. Warming feeds the planet. But we are in a glacial right now. We are in an ice age, and we are in an interglacial of the ice age. We're sort of a slight warming within an ice age. Warming is good in general, though, so that would be a good thing. Now, the controversial part is whether this CO2 has a positive feedback, so it can then affect something else. So if you increase CO2, it then leads to an increase in effect somewhere else. We call the positive feedback on water, because the major greenhouse gas, about 90%, let's say, of the major effect in the atmosphere for warming is water. So whether CO2 can affect water is the big debate. And if you see in my movie, I do try to explain it quite a lot, because that is the crux of the matter. Is there a positive feedback effect? This cannot be verifiable by observable behavior, and it has not, as yet, with satellite data and looking at the way that a change in CO2 occurs, especially at the tropics. Does it lead to hot spots, which are where the clouds are about 10 kilometers above? There should be a hot spot of warming, which is part of the theory of a feedback effect. It's not been observed.
It's not
never say never. You know, if someone came up to me and said that we can show there is a link and there is a positive feedback, which is the crux of the whole catastrophic global warming, I would, of course, be fascinated to see the evidence, but there is none. And it's based purely on this theorized positive feedback of 2.5 times sensitivity, as they say.
Yeah, it's like, it's there, it's just a question of time. We will find it. And this has got nothing to do with science, this is dogma. It's like, we will find the missing link. We will. It has to be there because our theory posits the fact that we will find it. But actually, I'm waiting for the missing link in anthropology to be provided, and I might wait an awful long time. I don't think.
Whereas they found the missing link in anthropology, I doubt they're going to find it here. You actually get the nail on the head there. It's CO2 in, CO2 out. So their models already posit, as you say, and already suppose there's going to be a CO2 feedback. It goes into the black box of the model, and it goes, oh, by the way, there's CO2 feedback, and that is it. It's a circular argument.
Do you believe, James, that we have a climate crisis?
I personally don't believe we have a climate crisis. I think you disagree on that. But, well, climate crisis. I think we have always got to be very aware of how we're affecting the planet. Now, generally, our effect is still quite minor. We are still just a small blip on a massive ecosystem. But we do have, for being a small blip, some would call it even a parasite, but so I wouldn't call us a parasite. But being only a small part of the ecosystem, we can only affect it in a relatively small way. But we can affect it in certain ways. Now, for instance, the coal power stations emit CO2. By the way, it's not a pollutant, it's a fertilizer. It's essential for growth. We're a carbon-based life form. CO2 emissions are great for us. If you take away the catastrophic tipping point, we're all going to die, it's actually a great thing to have. However, the power stations, which are the majority of our energy producing source, which is vital for civilization. We need the purest and the most important thing about civilization is cheap energy. That's it. And coal provides it. Now, they spout out sulfur dioxide. Now, that is a pollutant. And nitrous oxides. And these days, as long as you're using newer technology, then they're better at filtering out. These are pollutants, and they lead to acid rain. I remember growing up in the UK, and every week you'd have a complaint from Norway because all their forests were being melted away by the British coal burning, putting up the sulfur into the acid rain. And then you have people like, you have the Parthenon, you know, in Athens is sort of, because it's made out of a calcium carbonate type, you know, limestone, it's melting away because of the acid rain. You know, these are pollutants. And yes, we should prevent these sort of things. Or there's micropollutants, like the female pill goes into the water system, and you know, all the fish are turning androgynous. They're losing their sexuality because of the micropollutants. There's pollutants everywhere, or in farming, maybe seepage of nitrates and phosphates from, you know, the agricultural sluicing off the land. That they are pollutants. We have to be mindful of these sort of things. If you're saying there is an environmental problem, yes, we do have to be mindful of these things. But for me, CO2 is not a part of that problem. And the thing is, we're latched onto this CO2 thing. We're putting all our funding into CO2, and you've got many other problems that really are much more believable and could be fixed.
Absolutely. I've been around on this planet for 57 years. I remember the climate when I was growing up. Maybe we didn't have as good reporting systems then to tell us of all of the different disasters that were happening around the world. There's a great deal of controversy about whether earthquakes are on the increase, volcanic activity is on the increase or not. Again, manipulation of data is perfectly feasible, I agree. Perhaps the Earth's climate is always unstable, chaotic, and to have a relative period of everything apparently going fine is extremely rare. However, we do also have the issue of the background extinction rate, which has been fairly well studied. What would be the normal rate for species extinction on a planet of our type, and what is the current extinction rate? We're obviously very far ahead, according to the data that I'm looking at, of many species are currently going extinct. Now, what's your opinion on that? Is that manipulation of data, or is that happening?
Well, I haven't looked at the species extinction record per se, but let's start off. Is the planet made it more chaotic? Are there more hurricanes? Are there more droughts? Are there more floods? Now, first of all, with global warming theory, quite converse to what you're told by the mass media, a warmer planet is generally a stabler planet because weather systems are based around the fact that you have a cold in the Arctic and warm in the tropics. Now, if the planet warms up as a whole, it actually gets stabler. So it's generally agreed, and I think even the IPCC have admitted that now, that there won't be more hurricanes, even if there was global warming. But anyway, that's one issue. Now, is there more hurricanes? Well, if you look at the last 100 years of US data, based on realized, so as of now, insurance claims, no.